So last week I reviewed a guitar brand that I never thought would be found on my guitar rack in this studio, and that being the Ibanez S1070. So do check that out if you have a fondness for a more modern style of guitar. Now this week we go back to the time of the early 1960s and a guitar that would become famous because of its colour. Now apparently so coloured to show up better on the early days of television, since in those early days of broadcast, television was in black and white. Hello viewer, my name's Stu. Please do check out my guitar channel as it covers my journey back to playing and recording guitar after a 40-year break. So a big thank you again to all who take the time to subscribe, comment and get in touch. Always appreciated, and your support does help this channel. So coming up, number 1, the guitar and its specifications. Number 2, what does it sound like? Number 3, points of interest. And I'd like to say care always needed to be taken when buying used guitars, and we'll have a chat about that. Number 4, my likes and dislikes. Number 5, conclusion, final remarks. So without further ado, number 1, no doorbell ringing this time, and that's because I purchased this second-hand from a private seller who I travelled to meet to make the purchase. And more on that later, and some tips that you might find helpful when buying a used instrument. So no cardboard box, and so straight to the guitar case, and in this case it's a custom shop Gibson model, and inside a Gibson Les Paul Special double cut in TV yellow. It's a 1960s VOS, and the VOS stands for Vintage Original Specification. So this particular model is a modern 2020s custom shop build of the classic late 1950s, early 60s Gibson Les Paul Special double cut. And as I say, in this classic TV yellow finish, which is a nitrocellulose lacquer with a vintage patina finish. Now, for those not familiar with photographic principles, yellow filters were and are still used in black and white photography, as it helps to increase contrast, and so items yellow in colour would stand out well if shot in black and white. As a former commercial photographer, I can certainly vouch for that. The one-piece solid body and neck are solid mahogany, although notably very much lighter than the average Gibson Les Paul standard model. Being based on a vintage specification, you can see that all the metalwork has been tarnished and the lacquer is very thin and quite flat looking. Now, since I've owned this guitar, the lacquer has actually been checking, and you can see that very clearly here in both the horn sections. I'm okay with that, as it does tend to lend itself to the vintage nature of the guitar, but I'll comment on this a bit later in regard to atmospheric conditions affecting a guitar, both kept in and out of a case. Now, as you can see, it has the wrap tailpiece. You have the stud screws to adjust string height and the little grub screws in the tailplate, which can help with adjusting intonation. Now, what I will say is I have found the guitar to be very well intonated, and it does stay in tune really quite well. So despite the old-time setup, it plays very well and it's really very stable. There are 2 soap bar style custom P90 pickups in a black finish, and as with all vintage P90s, they do emit quite a bit of hum if you have your amplifier volume up loud or are using overdrive pedals. Here you see 2 volume and 2 tone controls in a top hat design, and to finish the body off, what looks like a 4-ply black scratch plate. The selector is the classic 3-way switchcraft with a yellow toggle, and for those interested, it has CTS 500K audio taper potentiometers and paper in oil capacitors. There has been one alteration to the standard design, and that is the addition of a strap button on the top horn, as it does feel better balanced and more secure than the original placement at the base of the neck. But you can see that that button is still there. The neck is a 1960s slim taper with a scale length of 24.75 inches and 22 authentic medium jumbo frets on an Indian rosewood fingerboard. Now the nut width is 1.69 inches and it's made of nylon. The fretboard has a cream binding and you can see paralloid dot inlays. Tuning machines are Clusen strips with white buttons, and the guitar, as I say, comes in a custom shop Gibson guitar case, and while the guitar is a tight fit, I will say that the body padding does not go far enough to support the body of the guitar, as there is space under my hand here, and this can cause stress on the neck joint, hence the lacquer checking. The case has a mottled look to it compared to the standard Gibson cases, and inside you have this pinky red soft material, a good sized pocket which holds the custom shop certification and other little knickknacks. So number 2, how does it sound? Well, I'm going to be playing through a Bad Cat Black Cat amplifier, which is not with me, as you can see in the studio at present. At the moment, it's away for an upgrade check. Now, it's a new amplifier and working absolutely fine, but Bad Cat were in touch with me to say that they'd been doing some upgrades as they continue to develop and refine their products and wanted to give mine a look over. So a big thank you to Bad Cat amplifiers, and no, I'm not paid to mention this. I reviewed my Black Cat combo a few weeks ago, so do check that out if valve amplifiers interest you. So to begin, I set the amplifier for a clean tone and a little reverb. And now the amp was set for an overdrive valve breakup tone and a little reverb. Now I added on top of that setting a favourite pedal of mine, a TC Spark Booster. So number 3, things I'd personally mention that might be of interest. So buying an expensive second-hand guitar, and notably something claiming to be a special model or vintage or a custom shop build. Price can be a red flag. If it's really cheap, then there might be an issue. Not always, but something to be aware of. How helpful the seller is to help you feel confident is another sign to watch for. Now, I met the seller face to face. I know everybody can't do that, as we both agreed to travel to a centre point in the country to complete the transaction. And to enable me to test the guitar's electrics, I took a little battery-operated Vox amplifier, which did the job perfectly. Now, being able to meet the seller and sit and chat and share stories, because like me, he was an older player, this helps you gauge who you're dealing with. And what I will say is he was also quite happy for me to go to his home, which was on the invoice receipt, if I wanted to try out the guitar before buying it. So if you're selling your equipment, keeping all the paperwork and packaging can really help a buyer trust you. Do comment below if you've got advice or experience. So number 4, likes and dislikes. What do I like about this Les Paul Special? Well, quite simply, it's a guitar I wanted in my small collection, and that's collection with a small C. Now, the double cut is my preferred favourite over the single cut model because I've never really liked the typical Les Paul shape. Now, the guitar is lightweight, it's very comfortable, it's not too dissimilar to holding a Telecaster in some ways, and despite the tail wrap with no saddles, intonation is very good on this guitar and it's a joy to play. So what do I dislike? Well, I'm not sure if it's the material used in the case, but I do find it feels like it draws moisture more so than cases that have the thicker plush velvet type material. And that's even with silicone gel packs kept in the case. Something to watch out for. So what I would say is regarding Gibson guitars, in those type of cases, you want to pay attention to atmospheric conditions. As you can see, the lacquer has really cracked in the inner horns here, and the frets were also quite badly tarnished. So after polishing the frets, treating the fretboard with Gibson fretboard conditioner and putting on a new set of 10 gauge strings, the guitar is just really nice to play. It's got a great tone and it's a joy to have. Now, the toggle switch and the volume tone pots, they can get a bit scratchy, but I think every Gibson I've owned does that. Usually a bit of moving back and forth or electrical spray resolves that quickly enough. Changing strings can be a bit awkward because of the wrap tailpiece, but as I say, you should expect some of these little quirks with a vintage spec instrument. I can't think of anything negative to say. It's a very enjoyable guitar to play and certainly one that would be great to jam with. I do think you need to marry it up to a suitable amplifier and pedals used to really bring the best out of the P90s. So number 5, conclusion, final thoughts. When I was looking for this model, brand new, there was nothing available and you had to pre-order, and the price was already listing as £500 more than the previous build, which they made very few of. So the Les Paul Special Double Cut TV Yellow VOS was and still is a guitar that's not always easy to track down. I don't think it has the same popularity as the single cut for some reason. What's your thoughts on that? Do message below. So when looking for one, the second-hand market, it was kind of quite bizarre, as there was a mix of custom shop and original 1960s guitars on offer. Most of them were pretty much abused condition, and some of the asking prices were pretty high. So it took a bit of searching, but eventually I came across this guitar, and it was one of those lockdown COVID-19 purchases that the buyer impulsively made. and so I ended up with a guitar with virtually no play wear at all and in mint condition. So perhaps you have a story to tell regarding an impulsive purchase. Do comment below. So I hope this has been of interest to you, and as I mentioned before, I'll be changing direction of any future videos I make as I begin my recording journey. And on another note, before I go, I said I was going to make some changes to my greeny Telecaster. Well, the part arrived today, so stay tuned. Please do think about subscribing, hit the bell to get notifications, like and share. It really does help the channel. Thank you. Do check out my channel playlist, which covers my journey back to playing and recording guitar after a 40-year break. Lots of videos there. So whether you're a newcomer, an old player, or like me, an old hand returning to guitar playing, I always take the time to engage with folks who take the time to comment. So until next time, the journey continues. Do take care.